Boom. Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Happy Monday. Woo woo. Happy cooler weather, thank God. Well, cooler-ish. It's been nice here in DC. Went to the zoo yesterday. Lovely day. How's everybody doing? We doing well? Sort of do our usual maybe where you guys check in and say where you are from, because I think that's a nice little tradition we've fallen away from lately, but I kind of like it. Oops, turn off my sound on my iPad. There we go. Now I can watch the TikTokers. Anyway, as always, a lot of show to talk about today. So we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, and then Wednesday is the next and possibly last January 6th committee hearing. So I don't know, maybe we'll do a live hangout for that. I don't know. I might. I got my hair colored. No, I didn't. I got my hair cut, colored. I think my hair changes color like every day it changes color. But no, I would not be ashamed of coloring it, but I do not color it. Anyway, all right, guys, I will, I'll start sort of informally here. Thank you for the gift on TikTok. Unstable internet connection. Better not be an unstable internet connection. That's my Wi-Fi. It should be an TikTok has been doing this to me the last few days, where it's been slowing. The internet connection's been bad. It's doing it again. Not sure why. Although it did clear up the other day once we gave it a minute. So we'll give it a minute, but it's being evil. Don't be evil, TikTok. That should be it's like Google's slogan. It should be TikTok's slogan too. Don't be evil, TikTok. It is buffering a lot, but what do you do? My internet connection is so freaking fast here in DC. It's ridiculous that it's buffering. Absolutely ridiculous. Should not be. There's no storms here by me, but you never know what's going on with the internet elsewhere. But no, it's I'm assuming for the TikTokers, you guys are doing okay with the connection. It's just TikTok that's been evil lately. Oh, anyway. All right, guys. So let me start. Little housekeeping things. Our Discord auction. We've got a Discord set up, remember. And if you guys go over there, discord.aravosis.com, we have regular auctions of really cool things. We just finished an auction of a very cool thing that I don't know if I can now mention it. I'm still afraid of mentioning this kind of stuff on TikTok and YouTube. I'm not going to say what it is, but we auctioned off something very cool from Ukraine that Lotus Lilith won. So congratulations, Lotus Lilith. We have another auction ending tomorrow for these very cool, authentic Ukrainian military patches. Whoop! That's a tanker patch that the guys who operate the tanks wear. This is just a very cool Ukraine flag, one that says Ukraina on it. And this is the patch for the Department of Homeland Security, internal security in Ukraine. It says Departament on the top, and it shows St. George slaying the dragon, which apparently is their logo. So these three going together tomorrow. And then the new auction I just put up on the Discord, it'll be up for another 4 days, is this very cool medal, Ukrainian Navy beret badge. It goes on the beret, my hair. It goes on the beret of the Navy guys. And it's, of course, an anchor, but it's the Ukrainian trident as well, which is a symbol of Ukraine. Comes with a little clip. So you can kind of see it kind of hooks in it's got those hooks, but it's also got the main thing. Anyway, this one I think is very cool. So that one's bidding, I think, through Saturday. Anyway, you can go to the Discord, sign up, folks, and join us. The latest Discord paid member is Marco from Sweden. Marco, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you becoming a member and supporting my work. As you folks know, very important, support independent media, support my work. I'm doing this full time, and I need your support to continue doing it full time because I got to be able to pay my bills. And if I can't pay my bills, I can't keep doing this. And I've got to go back to evil consulting, which I really hate doing. I'd much rather do this and help save the world. So thank you, guys. Final thing, you can go and help me out by going to my link tree. I actually set it up now. So it's simply my aravosis.com account, goes to my link tree. All the different ways you can help me are there. The Discord, my Patreon, my I'm forgetting, my shop, PayPal, Venmo, you name it. It's all there. So go check it out. So let's get to the show now. So you guys know, for questions, On TikTok, you can use the Q&A function that's in my profile. You'll see in my profile on TikTok, it says Q&A. Click that, submit your questions there. For the rest of you, use the little box at the bottom of the screen. And if you feel like supporting my work, and I do hope you will, you can use the super chat function, which is a nice way of contributing. And of course, I guarantee I get to every super chat question. So you can do that. Let me jump right in. Got my topics up here. So topic number one is Italian elections last night. A neo-fascist party won the Italian elections as part of a broader coalition of right-wing parties. There is some concern because the party has its origins in the fascist movement. It is considered the most far-right political party to have won election in Italy, to have won the government. She's going to be the next prime minister if she's not already. And it is the most far-right government that Italy has had since the war. And when people say since the war, they mean Mussolini's government in World War II, the fascist dictator. So this is bad news. She won by running on immigration and traditional family stuff, clearly a very anti-transgender agenda, anti-gay as well, but a lot of the coded language she was using to me sounded like anti-trans stuff, immigration as well. You know, it's something we got to keep in mind because this is not good. You know, we don't need to see the growth of more fascist movements in Europe as we fight it at home as well. What have I got here? Oh, yeah, just to tell you really quick. So hooking this back to Ukraine, which is the main point of our show. Although we do venture into other news. I do like to bring up other news when it's important. And Italy, this kind of an election in Italy is a big deal. She also is the first female prime minister in Italian history, which is a good thing, unless you're a woman who cares about representation of women. And you may not be happy to know that your first woman prime minister is a fascist. But what do you do? She herself has been her name is Giorgia Meloni. She has consistently backed Ukraine. Other members in her circle have a fondness for Putin, according to the Washington Post. One member of her coalition, Silvio Berlusconi, who you recall is the former Italian prime minister, falsely claimed that Putin was following the will of the people by invading Ukraine and that he intended to replace Zelensky's government with decent people. So there is some concern there about what this means for Ukraine. I want to talk about Iran briefly because I've been talking about Iran every day. As you folks know, we're in about the 10th day now of protests in Iran as a result of the morality police, as they're called. These are secret police in Iran who go around and patrol to make sure women are dressed modestly. But in Iran, dressed modestly means wearing loose-fitting clothing. It means wearing a hijab, which is the Muslim headdress that the scarf women have to wear to hide their head and hide their hair. It is a crime in Iran not to wear it. And this 22-year-old woman, Mahsa Amini, is accused by the morality police of apparently wearing her hijab, but not wearing it the right way. So possibly some of her hair was sticking out. That's a no-no, however she wore it. Arrested her in prison, in custody. She collapses into a coma and dies. Her father said she had beatings on her, bruises on her legs that she did not have going in. Just really, really horrific story. Everyone thinks the morality police killed her. There have been protests now for 10 days in that country since Friday or Saturday of last week. Pretty serious protests. I actually grabbed several new videos just to show you guys. Hang on, I'm going to bring them up here. I had to reboot my desktop because it was being evil coming in here. So here we go. All right, here's one. I just love those videos. I find that so empowering. I mean, even as an American who has no connection to Iran whatsoever, um, those crowds, the rhythm and the just everyone together. It's anyway very very empowering. Let me show you a second video. I've got 3 Iran videos to show you. The second one, I've got 2 that are protests. In one, they're burning. I don't know if this is the one. They're burning the hijab. They're showing the women sort of burning the scarf and the people being cheered on. This one, I don't know. This may be another just cheering crowd, but I liked it. Okay, and the third one, I think these are all actually kind of happy videos from Iran, I think. Yeah, the third one, I think, is the women throwing the hijab, the headdress, into the fire. And what's so great about many of these Irani videos is just the degree to which the men are supporting them, and the men are there at the protest. The men are cheering them on. It's really neat. I mean, it's nice to see the society come together to that degree. In Russia, one of the big stories today in Russia, and this story is a bit odd. This story is a little weird, but a swastika-wearing gunman opened fire in a school, killing 11 children and I believe 4 other people. Horrific story, obviously. There hasn't been much news on it since it came out this morning. One thing that's a little weird is while Russia is fighting a war that it claims is against Nazis in Ukraine, which is a lie. There are no significant Nazis in Ukraine, and certainly not in the Ukrainian government, which is what Russia was claiming all along. While the war is now foundering. I always get that word wrong. Foundering, I think. Floundering. I will never figure out which one that is. Now the war isn't doing so well. Thank you for the streamers on TikTok. Now that the war isn't doing so well, suddenly there's somebody with a swastika doing a horrific crime inside Russia when they're trying to justify a war against Nazis. It just seems a little weird. Although I'm willing to believe this is floundering. No, this is cute. I've got one person. I've got Big Hawk floundering, Virginia foundering, Deborah floundering. All right, I'm going to go with floundering because more of you are putting it, but that's very funny right there. Oh God. Anyway, so who knows? I'm not a big fan of conspiracy theories, but it is awfully convenient that actually what they could be doing too is they could be making up the Nazi thing. Right? The school shooting is real, but the Russians are making up the whole thing of, he had a swastika on his shirt and everything. That's possible. That I wouldn't put past. Mind you, Putin is believed to have blown up an apartment building in Moscow in order to help him assume power. He claimed it was terrorists. I believe it was Chechen terrorists, he claimed. And in fact, many people believe it was Putin himself had literally an apartment building of civilians blown up. I think 300 people. Was horrific, the crime. So, let's not just write things off as being random chance. New York Times. This was a horrific story I saw right before coming on with you guys. Pissed me off. So the New York Times reports that dozens of male basketball players, including some with the NBA, which is America's professional sports league, are playing basketball still and again for Russia, for Russian teams in Russia, including one woman who's playing for the team that Brittany Griner played for. One guy, I didn't write the quote down. I did it on my TikTok, on the TikTok update I did. But it was one basketball player said, you know, I know some of you might say, how could I go and work there right now? But I've got a family to provide for. I mean, okay, sure, we all have a family to provide for, but when Russia is literally kidnapping people, when Russia has a war that isn't going well, and it needs to find a way out of it, not a way out of it, but a way to find enemies to rally the people at home. Yeah, not the smartest move there. In any case, nukes. Yeah, let's talk about nukes. So this story, unfortunately, keeps getting bigger and bigger. I've got the curtains open today, by the way, because the sun was behind clouds. It's coming through, but actually, I think we're going to pull this off as it sets. It doesn't look like it's interfering too much with the camera, so that's good. The story is growing again in the media with everybody talking about Russia's nuclear weapons. So we got to talk about it. Part of the reason, oh boy. Yeah, see, that light is going to be, that's all right. The light's going to be an issue, but it'll be over soon. Part of the reason we have to talk about it is I want to set your guys' concerns at ease. And I forgot to mention as we went into this, love the TikTok gifts. Just remember, when I do this version where you can see where I've got the cool notes up and everything, the hats and the glasses do not work on TikTok. I don't know why, but if they don't, but all the other gifts do. So all the other cool things, the seashell or flying things, all that stuff works. Just anything that goes on my head doesn't work. So just be aware of that. So the nuke thing, okay? There is clearly a branch within Russia of the professional class of the TV, of the PR, the public relations class. Thank you for the origami. That is trying to scare us with the nuclear war thing. Okay. They're clearly doing that. One guy in particular, I think I may have mentioned him the other day, but he's doing it again. This guy, what was it? Trenin. And he is the former, of all things, he's the former Carnegie Endowment head Moscow chief, and now has been fired and now has gone. And apparently he was a really smart thinking guy. And now he's gone off the crazy deep end, this guy. He did an interview again talking about how, we need to threaten to blow up American cities. And if we threaten to annihilate New York and Chicago and whatever, then the Americans will respect us again. So there are people like him, and there's certainly people on the evening talk shows. All the time on those evening shows, they're talking about nuking everybody they can, right, in the West. So that exists. Now, I always make a point of reminding folks, thank you for that on TikTok. I always make a point of reminding folks that aspect of nuclear war, is never going to happen. I mean, most likely never going to happen, because we've got nuclear submarines. Russia has nuclear submarines. France and Britain have nuclear submarines. Those nuclear submarines have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of nuclear weapons on them. If Russia were to attack us, even if they had amazing, like they've got that new rocket that goes like 5 times faster or whatever, even if they use all of their new rockets and they sneak attack us, and let's say they take out every nuclear weapon we have in North America because they attacked us so well, so quickly, our nuclear submarines would destroy the entire Russian population in the entire country. I mean, there's no way for them to come after us. And the same thing goes if we wanted to try a sneak attack on Russia. Their nuclear submarines would wipe us out. We know it. They know it. There is no way that Russia is going to launch a nuclear strike on us, or that we're going to launch it on Russia, unless literally it's Dr. Strangelove. The movie with literally people out of their minds crazy, right? I mean, lunatic saying, nuke them. It's just not going to happen. The bigger concern is that Russia launches a tactical nuclear strike, a battlefield nuclear strike. We have some of these weapons. Russia has a ton of them. They're small nuclear weapons. I know I always think it sounds funny to even say that, but they're smaller nuclear weapons. They're not the big ones that take out cities. They're smaller ones that, you could use to take out a military headquarters. Think about it this way, okay? You know how you see bomb strikes on buildings and things, and you'll see the bomb got close and it took out a quarter of the building, or it took out the side of the building, or, whatever. If you're trying to take out, I mean, let's be gross about it. If you're trying to take out the presidential building in Ukraine or whatever, an artillery shell is going to take out part of it, right, or whatever. A tactical nuke is going to take out the whole building. I mean, it's disgusting. It's horrible. It's awful, but I mean, that's the kind of thing you would use it for if you're crazy, right? And the same thing for taking out a military headquarters. You use a tactical nuke, it'll for sure get the whole headquarters and everybody around it. You won't have to worry about it being well, will our weapon get close? Will we get everybody? Will a general get away? Okay. Um, the Carlos, I'll get to yours in a second. So that's the concern with this. Now, the question here becomes, would Putin use them, and why would he use them? I sort of took a lot of notes here. I'm going to sort of look this off. It's not clear from a lot of the military experts saying, why would Putin even use these weapons? What's it going to get him, right? I mean, forget the ICBMs. We've already talked about why that doesn't help. So if Putin's doing a cost-benefit analysis, good versus bad, launching an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile at America, he's going to say, well, that's stupid because America's just going to launch them back at us. So I get nothing out of that. Then he says, okay, I've got these little nukes that I could launch. I guess I could drop one, on Kharkiv, right? Second largest Ukrainian town. It would wipe out a city block or whatever. It would be horrific. But again, what does he get out of it? What does he get? Right? He wipes out a city block. What he's going to get is the Ukrainians livid with him, right? The Ukrainians are going to probably strike back 5 times as hard. I mean, it's not clear what does he get out of it, right? The other thing he's not going to get out of it, again, and think about it also like in terms of militarily, what's he going to do? He's going to, the Ukrainian troops are all over the country. How's he going to drop these little nukes and affect anything other than using it as a terror weapon to scare people, right? But again, can you imagine knowing what we know about the Ukrainians now? If a nuclear weapon, if a field nuclear weapon were to go off in Ukraine, imagine what the Ukrainians would do. Oh, you want to see a Ukrainian even more pissed off than they are now? I think it would get the Ukrainian motivation just that much more solid to go after the Russians, right? The other problem, as soon as Russia does that, they've now pretty much brought NATO into the war. Somebody had put out this analysis the other day, and I thought it was really good. And they were talking about how if the US and NATO were to sit back and let Russia use these tactical nuclear weapons, these small nuclear weapons, with impunity, basically saying, well, as long as they don't launch a big one, we'll just have more sanctions or whatever, right? But rather than us entering the war and saying that's it, it's over, then China could do it. I mean, North Korea could do it. India and Pakistan could do it. I mean, all of a sudden, Israel could do it. I mean, whatever. You're giving the green light to other nuclear countries to say, okay, well, as Russia has now proven in Ukraine, hypothetical here, as Russia has now proven in Ukraine, if you use these small nukes, the West isn't going to intervene. They're not going to really come after you, right? So America in particular, I don't know where Europe is on this. As an American, I can tell you, as an American policy expert for 30 years, there is no way America could let that stand. There's no way we would let that stand. So the danger for Russia is Putin does this in Ukraine, and I think it changes everything. I think congressional, not opposition to the war, congressional opposition to Russia goes through the roof. Congressional demands that Biden do something about this go through the roof. I don't think it would be the opposite. I think Fox News, Tucker Carlson may try to make it, oh, this is so dangerous now, we have to get out of here, like C-3PO in a little fascist bow tie. But I think for everybody else, they're going to be like, that's it. We can't let this stand. So America gets in the war. Some people have already said, U.S. former General Ben Hodges had said, for example, that he thinks we would potentially take out Russia's Black Sea fleet. We would literally go to Sevastopol by air and we would bomb and destroy Russia's entire Black Sea fleet. If we do that, we've entered the war. I mean, we will have blown up and directly killed Russian troops. That means we are now a party to the war. If that happens, some of the analysts are saying, well, but I saw an analyst the other day saying this, well, but if America does that, actually the light coming in is kind of funky. It is this sort of religious glow coming off my left or my right here. Some of the analysts are saying, well, but if America blows up the fleet or does whatever to Russia, then America is a party to the war, and we risk nuclear escalation. Putin blows up one of our ships, and then and then we could be nuking each other. And my response to that, and it's interesting because I had a number of sort of people I respect on TikTok, on Twitter, actually say they agreed with me. My response to that was, I think Putin's the one that has to worry about that analysis, Because when it comes down to it, what does Putin get by dropping a nuke in Ukraine and forcing America to enter the war? What does he get positive? Okay, maybe he gets a bump in support from the people back home. Because, right, well, evil America has entered the war now, right? So, all of a sudden, yay, Vlad. Okay, he's popular for a day, a week, a month. That popularity is going to go through the floor once we actually go to war with Russia, because we're going to win. Ukraine is at worst tied with Russia right now. I mean, Russia got a lot of Ukraine's land, maybe still 18% or something. Now Russia right now is losing a little bit to Ukraine, right? In the long term, who knows? But in the long term, at worst, it looks a little bit of a tie at the moment. If Russia can't beat Ukraine, they're not going to beat America. And they're not going to beat NATO, which is America and Germany, France, Britain. I mean, let alone Norway and some of the other really big NATO countries as far as a powerful military. Again, I come back to what is the benefit for Putin in doing this? It in the end, when we beat the Russian military, Putin's popularity is going to go through the floor. He may get that initial popularity boost. Oh, we have NATO. Now NATO's the enemy. They've entered the war. But when NATO starts kicking Russian ass, popularity goes down. Thank you for those lights on TikTok. And finally, that whole, nuclear war could break out. That was this argument this guy was using online. But then if NATO gets involved, it turns into a nuclear war. If it turns into a nuclear war, yeah, we need to worry about it because we'll all die. Russia needs to worry about it because they would all die. Like everybody, we know this, right? There's no good nuclear war, but they know it too. So if anything, the Russian analysts, Putin himself, but certainly people surrounding Putin, the generals and the security people, they themselves are saying, okay, and I'm going to wrap up with this. If we drop a nuke in Ukraine, that forces America to enter the war. If America enters the war, we are now facing an enemy that surely can kick our ass, let alone with everybody else in NATO who can surely kick our ass. So now we risk losing the war, which is really bad. And if we lose the war, Vlad keeps saying, President Putin, that if it really looks like we're losing, right, maybe we'd use our nukes. But if we use our nukes against America, America's got the same nukes and they'll use them against us. So we'll all be dead. So why would I, as a Russian general or a Russian security guy, or even Putin himself, want us to take a step in Ukraine by dropping this bomb that leads to the utter annihilation of my country? It doesn't make sense. Now, I realize sometimes in wartime, bad things happen that aren't planned, that aren't sensible, but that's why I think people need to just calm down. And I'm getting a little pissed at the media because the media is just on a, oh my God, nuclear war kind of frenzy lately. And I just think it's BS because in the end, if you go through it and analyze it, it doesn't make sense. So let's see. Final point here. The U.S., this was actually good. Jake Sullivan, who's our national security advisor in the White House to Biden, said the other day, we have communicated directly, privately, at very high levels to the Russians that there will be catastrophic consequences if they use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. And that is exactly what has to happen. The only way I see Putin using these nuclear weapons is because someone on our side didn't get the message to Putin and left Putin thinking the Americans are bluffing, NATO's bluffing, and if I use one of these nukes in Ukraine, they're not going to do anything. They'll do more sanctions. Ooh, scary, right? But they're not going to do anything. They're certainly not going to enter the war. That's the only way Putin, ironically, the only way Putin will use nukes, I think, is if we show weakness and we let him think that we're never going to respond. By letting him think we are going to respond and come down, with a can of whoop ass, as we say in America, then I think we can prevent it. Again, this is me surmising. None of us really know what would happen, obviously. So it's a dangerous situation. I'm not saying it isn't. All right, let me see here. The mobilization. I got a good amount of stuff on the mobilization. God, it's 6:30 already. Shoot, sorry. See, that was an important topic, though. The mobilization stuff, there's a lot of sub-issues I've got on the mobilization, too. Let's see how this goes, and I may drop a couple of the little stories at the end. Edward Snowden annoys me, but, if we don't update ourselves on Snowden, I think we'll survive. Mobilization. Okay, a lot of little sub-stories here, but interesting. So mobilization, when we say that, we're talking about the draft in Russia. Putin announced last Wednesday that he was drafting 300,000 people, men, but the latest numbers show it's probably more like 1.2 million men. He was only going to draft military reservists, which are men who previously served in the military. That was a lie. They're drafting lots of men who have no military experience. One guy was like in his 50s with no military experience. They drafted him. They aren't going to draft students. Well, guess what? They dragged students out of class in Russia and drafted them on the spot. So all of it BS as far as what's going on. So they're doing that. So they're doing a partial draft. The men reportedly are not getting good training. Putin and the generals claimed that, every man will get 2 weeks training. And it was like, 2 weeks. 2 weeks is a joke. I mean, it's an absolute joke giving these guys 2 weeks training. Many of these guys have not served in the military. Many of them who have served in the military, a year when they were 18. Thank you for that on TikTok. A year when they were 18, right? Most of these guys, some of them might have served in wartime, but a lot of them just did their year of military service that wasn't anything really special, If these guys had their military, if you're 30, you could have had your military service 11 years ago. That 50-year-old could have had his military service 30 years ago. If he had his military service 30 years ago and got 2 weeks of training, it ain't preparing him for much. Even worse, not everybody's getting training. We saw in one area, I think it was Kursk, that the local province leaders had said, we're not doing any training at all. The men are just literally being sent right to Russia, which is, outrageous. Oh, actually, sorry, I forgot I had 2 questions here. Let me do these really quick, and then we'll come back to our mobilization. Sorry. Carlos, are those Americans playing in Russia? Yes. Other foreigners, I don't know, but I would suspect those Americans are playing in Russia for Russian teams. Now, Brittany Griner's team reportedly was paying her $1 million, right? A season. So, or I shouldn't say a season. It's at $1 million. So it could have been a couple seasons, but they're making big money, and it's a hell of a lot more money, multiple times the amount of money they make here in the West. And they can potentially do both. They play in the West, and then in our off season, they go to Russia and play. So yeah. Oh yeah. They're playing in Russia. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Craig, Igor Girkin. Yes. The separatist leader and Russian blogger is arguing against tactical nuclear weapons because he believes NATO will give Ukraine nukes to defend themselves and use them against Russia. That's crazy. I mean, that's not going to happen. Now, that's one way to stop Russia from nuking, potentially, is giving Ukraine a nuke, because then Russia worries Ukraine's got nuke. I did this before. Every time we talk about Ukraine and nukes, I always rename the country Nukraine with an N, which isn't on purpose, but it's catchy. Ukraine, there's no way in hell we would give Ukraine nuclear weapons. It just wouldn't happen. There's no way. But it's an interesting, crazy idea of something that could potentially stop the Russians from using their nukes, worrying that Ukraine's got them too. The other thing, though, is, Ukraine's got the nukes, and then the Russians find out where the nukes are. So Russia then launches an ICBM to, like, for example, they know the nuke is in Kyiv, the capital somewhere. So they launch an ICBM and take out the entire capital to take out the nuclear weapon that Ukraine has. You get into that risk. So that's an added reason why I think in the end I couldn't see the U.S. doing it. I think it would be crazy. It's interesting, but I think it would be crazy. I think it's crazy. Anyway, yes, crazy thinking. U.S. men playing one woman. That's exactly what I heard too, Marianne. Yeah, it's dozens of U.S. men, and it's the one woman playing on Brittany's team. And of course, yes, the women getting less pay, because that's of course, the women are getting less pay. That's kind of a a guarantee. So anyway, back to the mobilization. So one woman was saying, she was speaking to Media Zona, which is a Russian independent news, that her 45-year-old husband got 1 day of training before being sent to Ukraine with a tank division. Take that down. 261,000 men have reportedly already fled Russia to go to other countries to avoid the draft since Wednesday, when Putin announced the new policy. So from Wednesday until I believe this is Wednesday until Saturday. So this is just in 4 days that 261,000 men fled. And this is according to an internal report of the Russian government that leaked. So potentially these are real numbers if they're Russian government numbers, but they're Russian government numbers that were meant to be kept internally, right? If anything, they're numbers that, knowing the Russian government, they're probably numbers that were meant to look, to look better, right? So that's very bad. My cousin was telling me, actually anecdotally, that he's got one of his businesses has employees in Russia, information technology employees. And he was saying that before Wednesday's mobilization, before the draft, he offered to get them out. And they were like, no, we're fine. He goes, really? He goes, I can get you out, we'll pay to get you out of the country, put you somewhere safe. He goes, no, we're fine. Okay. Well, as of Wednesday, all the men in the company were begging him to get them out. They couldn't find any flights. All the flights are booked. They're crazy expensive, but they're all booked anyway. No planes, nothing. He finally chartered a jet or whatever to go there. It's going to an obscure place. I'm certainly not going to say any of this, and it may have already happened, but it's going to an obscure place that these people have to travel, across the country to get to. And even that jet was very hard to get. I say jet, whatever, little plane that they hire. Crazy expensive and very hard to find. So this is real what's going on in terms of the men trying to flee the draft now. Lithuania's defense ministry says that Russia may introduce martial law in order to stop Russian men from leaving the country. That's how bad things are getting. Kind of related. So the annexation elections are taking place. They started on Friday, I believe. They end tomorrow. These are the elections. And let me pull up this little quick to show you on the map. The provinces. Here we go. These are the elections in Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk. Those 4 provinces in a row, sort of in a crescent, that Russia is occupying, and Russia wants to make them part of Russia. You can see Russia to the east. Well, Russia wants to take all of those and just make them part of Russia. Well, they're having elections right now. They're going door to door with guns, machine guns, and basically standing in front of people and going, here, fill this. You've got 2 boxes. Check the box in front of us so we can watch. Do you want to join us or not? Yeah. Guess what's happening there. I was going to show you. So one of the things also real quick, Dagestan, this has been very interesting. Actually, maybe Marion could tell us more about Dagestan. Marion likes to put me on the spot with questions, but I like to put her on the spot. Are those the election results already? All right, voters till now. Yeah, is that wanting to join or not, Deemer? Which is that? Oh, just voting. Okay. But in Dagestan, which is a very poor Russian province, there have been a lot of protests from the beginning. And there was a video last week, and I meant to show it to you guys, but I forgot. I don't think I showed you. And it shows a woman running the recruitment office or whatever it is. And she's telling the men, and the men are like yelling at her from down below. And she's telling them about, their patriotic duty and all this kind of stuff. And, we must fight for the future of our country. And then one guy yells, our future? We don't even have a present. I mean, literally, this is the stuff he yells at her. Well, I'm going to show you really quick. This was a protest either today or yesterday of women in the country shutting down the street and yelling at the police, no to war. Our children are not fertilizer. Check this out. Let me pull this up. All right, Ukraine and Dagestan. Here we go. I think that was my favorite part, where they're about to grab the woman and he's got her, and then she screams, all the other women jump in and kind of knock him away. It reminds me of Greece, to be honest. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting. very interesting seeing these kind of societal problems. And mind you, again, this is not even a full draft. This isn't even a full draft. There are reports with regards to the sham election. The election will be over tomorrow, and they think by as early as Thursday, Putin will announce, oh, all these 4 regions have decided to join Russia. They are now Russia. And of course, what all the crazies are going to say on the Russian side. And now if Ukraine attacks these 4 regions and they use Western weapons, then they will be attacking Russia, right? Because all these Ukrainian regions are now Russia, and it'll be nuclear war and all this kind of BS. So again, our response should be no. So the Russians reportedly are forcing Ukrainian prisoners of war to vote, and in favor of annexation, of course. They also are forcing. They're going to apartment buildings, and they're forcing people who are there to vote on behalf of their relatives who have left town. Thank you for that on TikTok. Their relatives who have left town, and their neighbors who have left town. So, I mean, imagine they're literally going, well, half your hall is gone. So that's 20 votes. You get to vote for the 20. That's 20 votes for you, right? Gun in hand, comrade. How are you going to vote? Are you going to vote for us or the Enzies? Right? I mean, really sick, but really sick. I mean, yeah, big free. They're not even trying to make it a fair election. More violence at recruiting centers. Meduza, another Russian independent media, reports that 11 military enlistment offices and 6 administrative buildings have been set on fire in Russia since Wednesday when mobilization started. Following that story, the New York Times reported that a gunman, apparently distraught over Russia's military mobilization, opened fire at a draft office in Siberia today, seriously wounding a recruitment officer. As far as the impact of mobilization, I'll try to make this one quick and then we'll wrap it up. Institute for the Study of War talked today, a really nice long analysis, but I'll give you the bullet points on what the impact of mobilization is going to be, what the impact of this draft, is it going to make a difference? Okay, and I'll close with this. To summarize them, 1, the public has not been prepared for war or a general mobilization. Their point is that Putin at the beginning and all the pundits that are paid by Putin and controlled by Putin said up until the invasion, they said, we're not invading. Those are NATO lies. So they didn't even prepare people for a war. Okay. Even the soldiers, even the Russian troops, many of them thought they were going for military exercises and had no idea they were even in Ukraine, let alone they were fighting a war. 3rd, Putin has still refused to call it a war. He's still calling it a special military operation to make it sound like it's something less, right? Unlike previous mobilizations, and we're talking over 200 years of Russian history, there's no existential threat to Russia. This isn't World War II where the genocidal Enzies are crossing your border in your country and they're literally going to either enslave you or wipe you out. There are no Ukrainian troops taking over Russian lands. I mean, the Ukrainians have been smart that way. And there's just no comparison. There's no reason Putin should feel an existential threat, but there's no meaning to his job, but there's no reason that Russian citizens should feel like, they're sitting here going, really? This again, and this country that, you kind of told us was nothing on our border, we're supposed to think they're going to overthrow us. So they conclude by saying, so if hang on a second, where was it? I turned the wrong page here. They conclude by saying that the reservists are going, and the reservists are going to be horrible quality. Obviously, they don't want to be there. They're not getting training. The problems undermining Putin's effort to mobilize his people to fight finally are so deep and fundamental that he cannot likely fix them in the coming months and possibly for years. Putin is likely coming up against the hard limits of Russia's ability to fight a large-scale war. All right. Sorry, that was a little bit long today, but I did feel like we had enough news that was worth getting into. So voila, that is our news for today. All right, let's do question. I'll go a little bit late. We can go a little late since I did go a little bit long here. So on TikTok, let me get my thing. On TikTok, as I always say, go to the Q&A and put your questions there. And the rest of you, of course, can use the Q&A at the bottom. Actually, I've got a few more of your questions that I saved here. Let me see. Oh, and actually ran into a friend today who also lost his voice mysteriously for the last 2 weeks. I saw somebody else on a video 2 days ago saying the same thing, like, oh, they're just coming from losing their voice. Remember, I lost mine for like 5 weeks. There's something going. I think there's a bug going around, and the only way it manifests is people losing their voice. Just my guess. When this pops up in a month or two and everybody talks about it, you'll know you heard it from me first. PB&J. What will NATO do if Russia uses chemical weapons? That's a good question. Nothing was done in Syria when they used them. That's a good question. That would be a concern. Yes. And I think clearly the administration would have to have made clear that chemical and biological are a problem too. Now, the problem you get is that nuclear sounds worse. Nuclear shocks people more. So he uses chemical weapons in Ukraine. There will be horrific images coming out, right? Like we saw in Syria, but it's not the same as nuclear. People will be mortified and horrified, but I really, this is my analysis of it. I think it's an interesting question as to whether NATO gets involved in the war itself with chemical. With nuclear, we would. No matter how small the nuclear, we would. With chemical or biological, I don't know. I think in order, again, to stop Putin from using them, we would have to have laid down the riot act and told him any use of them means we're entering the war, period. That's the only way to stop him from doing it. But would we? And again, we saw it under Obama in Syria, right? That was the red line. They crossed it. We didn't really do anything. So I don't know. Rob is asking, groupthink, practice of thinking or making decisions as a group in a way that discourages creativity or individual responsibility, possibly happened with the Russian military and nukes. Maybe, but I don't know. I mean, because again, if you're Russian military, the only way of doing it, the only thing would be if they literally convinced themselves that we wouldn't get involved. And I don't know how they do that in terms of using nukes. I don't know how they do that. Because especially that one argument, you tell them, if this happens, America's going to have to get involved because otherwise the message will be sent to everyone around the world that it's okay to use tactical nuclear weapons and America won't get involved and they'll let you do it to your neighbors. And there's no way the United States would stand for that. I mean, I know it as an American. There's no way we would. I mean, our people, interesting question of where the American people are. Our government, no way we would let that stand. Not under this government. Donald Trump, who knows, right? A sane Republican government would never allow it. And no Democratic government would allow it to happen either. Let the Russians get away with it. So, groupthink's a problem, but it depends on just, I guess, how much information they're actually getting. I mean, are the Russians actually getting a read? Scott, you maniac. How are you? T. Scott. I still tell people story about your French test, Scott. Scott went to Georgetown with me, and Scott has a wonderful Arkansas accent and had a very hard time with his French. Oh my God. Scott's a very smart man and should be a U.S. Senator. He's not, but he really should be. What insights do you have about the stability of Putin's leadership within Russia relative to the military? How long will his military leaders continue with him? I mean, the only time it's come up has been, again, sort of the experts I read and see on TV, and everyone kind of says, Putin's doing fine, that they just don't feel like his position is being threatened yet at all, because he runs such a tight ship and a tight dictatorship. They've always said, a lot of what I see is always bringing up the security services, the generals, but he seems to kowtow them pretty well, but that the security services have traditionally been the protectors of the faith and the protectors of the state. And the idea that eventually, if he keeps screwing up and he's so putting the republic, whatever you call it, the country in danger, that their future in danger, that they may get rid of him. I don't know how they get rid of him, but they may. Actually, I shouldn't say I don't know how. I forget whether it was the Internal Security Ministry or whatever that has something like 100,000 men working for them or something. I mean, so they apparently have their own, which kind of makes sense in Russia. Internal security has a lot of men working for it. So that's the thing. But I mean, I haven't seen anything from anyone. Not only that, I've seen the people that I read and see have all said no. There's no indication of any threat to his leadership. The only thing is, what becomes interesting is the people, right? Afghanistan, it was the people that really went nuts. as far as the moms were the big problem, and coming out of Afghanistan, and that helped bring down the government and the country, the system of government even. So, they're not there yet, but I do think the mobilization thing is fascinating. It's fascinating. At first, it was those protests the first day, and I think a lot of us kind of went, "Thank you for the butterflies on TikTok." A lot of us were kind of wondering, is it gone now? They had one day of protest, big deal. But seeing all the men fleeing, this Dagestan thing is kind of fascinating. And mind you, videos of Dagestan keep going around the country because Russia hasn't shut off the internet the way the way Iran has. So people are still seeing this, and you've got to imagine if you're in other towns, other mothers around the country going, if they can stand up for their children in dirt poor Dagestan, I can do it too. I don't know. Let me see if you TikTokers have got anything up here in the Q&A. God, good to see you, Scott. We got to catch up by phone. I don't know why I haven't talked to you in decades. It's ridiculous. What about the Japanese diplomat that was arrested by Russian authorities today? I have no clue about that, but I don't know why. Let me look. Why did they say they did it? Hang on. These diplomats arrested in Russia. 3 hours ago, U.S. News. AP. Russia said Monday it had detained a Japanese diplomat based in the eastern city of Vladivostok for soliciting restricted information. Okay, that's classified information. Japanese diplomat was detained red-handed while receiving in exchange for financial reward restricted information about Russia's cooperation with another country in the Asia-Pacific region. Well, only two countries I can think, one in particular that could be. Seeking out information on the impact of Western sanctions on the region, blah, blah, blah. They're gonna kick him out. They're gonna kick him out. Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I think they're just gonna kick him out. The new platform, I love what it keeps freezing up. The freezing up is TikTok because the platform has been working fine. Just TikTok folks know it hasn't been the platform. TikTok in the last couple of days just started freezing. By the way, is TikTok still freezing? Because this is what it did when I used it before. It froze the first couple minutes, and then the rest of the show was normal, which is crazy. But let me know on TikTok. Give me a quick, don't give me a yes or no. Give me sentences. Is it freezing? Has it been fine? It was early. That's what I thought. Okay, that's what I figured. It starts bad and then goes on. Snowden. So Snowden, Vladimir Putin gave Edward Snowden his dream. He's now officially a Russian citizen, and his wife, who's Russian, is now applying, or I shouldn't say she's Russian. Her name is Russian. She's applying too. So who the hell knows what his wife is that she doesn't have citizenship, because they want their family to have citizenship so they can travel. Now, I don't know where the hell Edward Snowden thinks he's traveling other than China, North Korea, and Venezuela and Nicaragua, but otherwise, and if I were him, I wouldn't get anywhere close to the Western Hemisphere if I were that boy. So the Russians are saying he won't be drafted because, get this, he won't be drafted because he doesn't have any experience with the Russian military. Except that lots of the people being drafted have no Russian military experience. So why does Snowden get the advantage of not being drafted? Right? I think they should draft him. And honestly, I think Snowden himself should volunteer because he's such a big fan of Russian freedom. He should show people just how great the Russian army is. It's such a wonder. I can't stand. I've never could stand that guy. Never could stand him. I think, not to mention, you take a job because you wanted to steal stuff. Oh, good for you. Good for you. I know, there were rumors all weekend, but not from anything serious that China had a military coup. There were none of the main media picked up on it because I think they all looked into it. And clearly none of them were able to get any sourcing that said it was even vaguely an intimation of a problem or anything else. And I think my guess is CNN and all the rest of them, Washington Post, Washington Post, New York Times, basically determined that it would be irresponsible of them to report this if there were no information at all, even vaguely suggesting that it were real. So that's my take on that. I think it's totally untrue. Yeah. let me look here because I know you guys had other questions, so that they scrolled by. Let me see. In a little bit of positive news from Tired Guy, the British Ministry of Defense announced that they have met with Russian defense attaché to improve channels of communication for the purpose of risk and escalation management. That is a good thing, actually. Even now, when we don't like each other, you want the military folks to be talking to help sort of de-escalate things if bad things happen. Yep. Carwin, do you believe that Ukraine, if they do manage to push the Russians out, will push further and into Russia? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, first of all, because they are worried about the nukes as far as that goes. Then it gets a little weird. I mean, I wish they could take part of Russia, but I think if you're Ukrainian, here's the thing too. If you're Ukrainian, you want to be like pure lily white as far as dealing with America and the rest of the West. Yeah, I'll report the buffering when we're done with this. Sorry, guys. You want to be lily pure, and you want the West to look at you and NATO to look at you and say, you kept your promises. You not only did you not use our weapons to attack Russia, you didn't even go in and take an inch of Russian territory, because if you're Ukraine and you win this war, you need massive support from the West to stop Russia from invading you again in 5 years. And it's going to happen, or 10 years, whatever it is, they're going to invade again. And the only way to stop them from invading again is either you have just ridiculous quality military, but I think more importantly, you've got American advisors and American soldiers and NATO soldiers, NATO troops are spread all over your country, so that if Russia invades, they kill NATO troops, and literally it's instant war. But exactly, it's like, you could take a few. I mean, somebody's saying like North Korea and South Korea, you could try to take a buffer. I think that's problematic though, because I still think it gets into that issue of Russia saying, well, no, they took our land. I think you get to the borders but like the Koreas, you put a demilitarized zone. If the United Nations can't do it because Russia's on the Security Council, so Russia vetoes it, have NATO put a buffer zone on the Ukrainian border of NATO troops, so that if Russia passes, they have to kill NATO troops to do it, and they're immediately at war with NATO. But otherwise, it's going to happen again, and we get dragged in again, Oh, well, it's kind of the same thing we're saying, PB&J. Would they build a wall? Yeah, how do you say build the wall in Ukrainian? I don't know that a wall does it anyway, though, right? I mean, you'd have to put up minefields and things between your border and theirs, but which also, though, means demilitarizing it. I mean, not demilitarizing it, but depopulating it and everything. I mean, I don't know. Let me look again at TikTok. Yeah, I'll go, like I said, I'll go about 5 after. Thank you for the jewelry on TikTok. I'll go till around 5 after, because like I said, I'll go a little bit later since the briefing was long. The school shooting in Russia, I mean, I don't think the school shooting itself is propaganda. I'm going to assume the school shooting is real in Russia. As I said, I just think it's a little weird that when Russia is fighting a war against Ukraine and claiming the sunset and claiming the war is happening because Russia needs to denazify Ukraine, that suddenly a guy wearing a swastika is shooting up a school. So suddenly you got the entire country, and mind you, school shootings in Russia don't happen like they do in America every week. And even in America, we get freaked out every time it happens. But of course, then we don't care. But still, so imagine in Russia when it doesn't happen every week, how freaked out they are. So you've got a high profile event that it was a Nazi while Russia's fighting Nazis. My thought was that the school shooting's real, but mind you, the Russians, the government could make up any lie they want. The Russian government put and said, make him a Nazi. And they said, oh, we'll just tell everybody he had a sweatshirt. Even better, get a sweatshirt, put a swastika on it, and we're just going to tell and watch him go, it wasn't my sweatshirt. So that's my guess of the propaganda aspect of it. I wouldn't be surprised if the shooting's real and the facts surrounding it are a lie. What is another platform I can support you on? Well, that's a good question. You can, first one thing, and you can find all of them here, actually. If you go to erevosis.com, my last name. So if you're on any of the services, actually. Usually my name, like on TikTok, it's at Aravosis. On YouTube, it's John Aravosis DC. So you'll see my name on all these services. Ooh, that's a cool one. Sorry, I'm looking at the GIFs on the GIF that just popped up on TikTok. That was neat. Oh, that looks like a new one. It was like some cool Star Trek thing with meteors coming down. That was, I'm a sci-fi guy. So, okay, look, first of all, depending what service you're on, if you're on TikTok, you can obviously buy the gifts and things. That helps a lot. Other services, you can go to aravosis.com. I've got Patreon. I've got PayPal. I've got Venmo. I've got Cash App. You could just literally support me directly with that. Okay, that would be great. It helps. On Discord, you can go to my Discord, and on the Discord, you can sign up for free, but you can also check it out there. The README explains it. You can become a member via Patreon. And via Patreon, you can get sort of extra VIP status, which gives you sort of access to some different things depending how high up you are. But it's also just simply a way to support me. I've got a store set up. You can check out the store as well. It's store.aravosis.com. But again, you can find it by going to just the easiest way is start with aravosis.com, which is my link tree. All the links in there are ways you can follow me, but also ways you can support me. Okay, so I would say start with that, but thank you I appreciate you asking that. Couple more minutes, because I'm serious, guys. It's like, this is full-time and I ain't making full-time income. I'm sort of hitting dry bones in terms of my bank account now, which is not good. So I'm going to have to figure out how to get more money coming in. What is the new platform? Snowden, I gave you. Do you think some of the missing classified documents could contain intel on Ukraine? Maybe. Thank you for the gift on TikTok there. Maybe. I don't know. Secretary Blinken warns Russia of severe response. I did see that today. He gave a very nice, strong statement on that, which was great. Rob Wall is saying, speaking of meteors, 7:14 p.m. tonight, NASA will collide a satellite into a meteor to see if it's possible to deflect the trajectory. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's very interesting. I hadn't even heard of that, Rob. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's thank you for the origami on TikTok. It wouldn't be a bad idea for us to start exploring those options, right? I mean, rather than, it's a little late. Actually, I don't know if you guys follow this, but on Twitter, there's an account called New York Times Pitch Bot. And basically, it's a satire account making fun of the New York Times. Thank you for the heart there on TikTok. It's a satire account making fun of the New York Times. And it's these pitches that are, sure, Donald Trump tried to violently overthrow the government and has embraced Nazis, but Barack Obama wears tan suits. This kind. I'm not making a good, but it's that kind of stuff, and it's all these kind of things the New York Times would do, and because of Maggie Haberman's book that just came out, and it's like all of the New York Times reporters, especially Washington Post too, they always seem to get all these scoops that they know about at the time, but they don't tell us until it's too late for us to do anything about it. About our lying leaders, and it was, what was it? New York Times Pitch Bot. New York Times reporters have uncovered the trajectory of an asteroid that will wipe out all life on the planet next week. Read about it all in our 2023 tell-all. And it was great. It was just, I thought, but you got me thinking of it. That one just cracked me up. I loved it. Read all about it in 2023 in our tell-all book. Oh God. But yeah, that's interesting. The nudging, it is interesting. It's a great account. I mean, whoever writes it is very good. What else? All right, guys, I'll do one or two more and then we'll call it quits, because I do want to go to the Discord and hang out a little bit too. Georgia. I'm not really up on Georgia as much. What happens if Georgia tries to take back the land they lost to Russia? I'm not really up on. I will say this. One of the things that, and maybe I'll make this my last question, but one of the things that Russia needs to worry about is this war has, emasculated, thank you, TikTok, has emasculated the Russian military, not even emasculated the Russian military. It has pulled the curtain back on the Russian military so that we didn't know how emasculated they were. And now we know, right? So it's not like the war has cut the balls off the Russian military. The balls were gone and we just sort of figured it out. if I were, okay, in addition to that, so now we know the Russian military isn't as strong as we thought it was. We also know that the Russian military has been taxed to death in terms of the losing troops, whether it's death, fatigue, wounds, things like that, right? So they've lost tons of troops. They've lost tons of weapons, tons of equipment. And this is a war without end at this point. So they're going to keep having to pour resources they don't have into the war. Well, if you're Georgia or Moldova or I guess Armenia or Azerbaijan, depending, because at this point it's not clear which side Russia's supporting anymore. Your or Turkey, even whatever, your calculus of what would Russia do if is better than it was before. Because before you were calculating, okay, one of my variables is Russia is, I don't know, has a military 90 out of 100. If you're grading them on a scale of to 100, that's part of my calculus. Well, now my calculus is Russia only has a military that's 55 out of 100 because they're not as strong as we thought they were, and they're weaker anyway because of the war. So Georgia and everybody else, Russia has to be worried, or China for that matter. I don't know if they've got any territorial disputes. We know Japan does. They need to worry about somebody else now looking at them and going, you're not that strong. And wouldn't now be the perfect time, especially in Asia, it's the perfect time to cause trouble in the Russian Far East, right? All the way over there because it's 11 time zones away from Ukraine. What's Russia going to do? Go back and forth with their military? So that's I don't know enough about the Georgia and all of that. Wasn't that South Ossetia, I think? I don't know enough about it, but I would worry if I were Russia. And this is where, again, Scott was asking this about Putin's hold on power. That's the stuff you got to keep in mind if you're some other power broker in Russia, is this guy has put your entire country at risk. Not just his presidency, but he's put the entire country at risk because any enemy is now looking at you going, you're not that special. And you're in trouble because you've been fighting a war for 7 months that's never going to end. So anyway, all right, guys, boom. That is it for today. I will be back I'll be back. I can speak. I will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Join me then if you would. I would also ask, join us right now. I'll go over to the Discord for a little bit. We'll hang out. If you go to the Discord, once you join, you got to sort of do some stuff, but then scroll down and you'll see voice channels. Look for John's after party. That's where I will be with everybody. We usually get 30 to 50 people. We hang out many nights at least. And other than that, if you go there, check out the auctions. The auction proceeds are split between me and humanitarian aid we do in Ukraine. So that's one way you can help. But as I said, you can also go to erevosis.com and check out other ways of helping me. Just donations alone would be really helpful. But I certainly don't object to the Patreon route with my Discord, because then it's a monthly contribution, and that helps. Because having a monthly contribution can get me to the point where then I don't have to worry about the monthly income by constantly asking you guys for money. But at this point, yeah. All right, I will do a very quick recap. At this point, I mean, I'm not making money, and I just can't keep doing this, unfortunately. So here we go, really quick. Fascist party wins in Italy. Protests continue in Iran. Gunman opens fire in a Russian school, killing 11 kids. Dozens of male basketball players and one woman at least are continuing to play for Russian teams. On the nuclear front, you're seeing American media talk a lot about the nuclear threat from Russia. I still think it's bogus and not in Putin's interest and not in Russia's interest. On the mobilization front, men are getting mobilized with 1 day of military training and sent to war. 261,000 Russian men have already fled the country since just last Wednesday. Lithuanian defense minister thinks Russia may introduce martial law to stop men from fleeing the country. The sham elections are taking place in Ukraine and the occupied territories. Russia is having a fake election where later this week, very likely, Vladimir Putin is going to claim that the Russian territories have now decided definitively the Ukrainian territories, that they want to join Russia. So that's going to come up at the end of the week, we think. 11 military enlistment offices and 6 administrative buildings have been set on fire in Russia since mobilization began last Wednesday. And finally, Institute for the Study of War says that mobilization is just not going to have that big of an impact it's certainly not going to make a difference this year, and it may not make a difference yet next year because the training is so bad, the equipment is so bad, and it's not. And mind you, final points I didn't mention, we already know how bad logistics is. The Russians are terrible at trying to supply their troops. How are they going to supply another 300,000, 1.2 million of them, or whatever they get? They can't. So a lot of folks don't think that's a big deal. discord.aravosis.com. Also, you can keep in mind that that's discord.aravosis.com. You can simply go to aravosis.com and I will type it in here anyway, at least on most of these. Aravosis.com gives you the link to all the different things. Also, I set up a podcast where my audio from these video briefings every night will be saved as a podcast. So that's over on SoundCloud as well, soundcloud.com/Aravosis. But that as well, you can find in the Linktree link at aravosis.com. So the best thing to do is just go there. And all right, guys, I'm going to head out to the Discord, discord.aravosis.com. Join us, please. And again, it's free to join, but if you want to become a paying member, like Marco did in Sweden this weekend, that would be extremely helpful. So thanks, guys. I will see you tomorrow at 6, okay?